What's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So if you sat through my last video, I said the next video is going to be a walk around in my truck. That is not going to happen. So everybody I've been talking to, I've been trying to learn this YouTube thing, and they say you got to upload once a week, at least minimum. 2 is better, 3 is better than that. So that's a stretch for me. I'm aiming for once a week, and I'm going to do my best to do that. I'm slammed right now. I'm behind, so the walk around is going to take a little bit more time. So today I'm just going to do a quick video of basic hand tools that if you're just getting into welding, fabrication, you know, buying up some tools. These are all relatively cheap tools, basic hand tools that are good to have, that really everyone should have starting out in the fab. Some of these are a little more advanced, or not necessarily as needed. So I'm going to start from here to here. As I go through, I'm just going to drop them on the floor. So first thing, magnets and clamps. So there's all kinds of magnets and clamps out there. I have way more than this style. These are just the ones I use on the daily basis. The other styles I really don't care for or use as much, but everyone has their own opinion on stuff. They may like something better. So the first thing is a right angle magnet. If all you ever want to do is bend round tubing, you may not find yourself needing this. I don't use it a lot either, especially for the actual right angle purpose, but I have built plenty of stuff where I did need it, and it's coming really handy. Underneath this plate is a rectangle of square tube. I use magnets on all 4 corners. It's not perfect. Just because it's 90 degrees doesn't mean when you put 2 pieces of metal in a square that the whole thing is going to be square. So you still have to tweak it, but it definitely is better than just hoping for the best and setting it there. So if you've never seen one, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. So that's that. I see I've got them off, but anyway, so that's the magnet. They're pretty cheap. They come in usually a 4-pack or a 2-pack. If you don't think you'll need it, all you want to do is build roll cages, I would go ahead and get it. A lot of times I find myself using it. Just stick it to a table, have something pushed up against it, like this, say, or 2 of them with a piece of tube against it, using it as like a backstop. They have more than one purpose, so I definitely recommend getting a set of these. Now, this is probably one of my favorite tools. I don't know if you can see that. So this is called a strong hand magnet, and Strong Hand, I believe, is just the brand that sells it. They're kind of expensive for what they are, but they're worth their weight in gold, in my opinion. So they have 100 different uses you can do. They also sell 100 variations of these for basically everything you could imagine. They got them for little arms that can hold tabs, and one side's a magnet. But so far, these have just been my favorite. They swivel. They got magnets on the backside here. So if you've seen, follow me on Instagram, you've seen some of my stories, you'll constantly see these things sticking on bumpers. So, I mean, if you've got say a stinger on the front of a bumper, you clamp it, stick it to the main bar of the bumper, one on the stinger. You're trying to weld on some link brackets. Take 2 of these, one on the bracket side, one on the frame of the truck, and it'll hold a 1/4 inch link bracket to the frame like it's nothing. So these things you can do almost anything you can think of with them. And if you don't have a set, I definitely recommend these. I'll go ahead and link all the stuff that can be found on Amazon in the description, these included. So be sure to check that out. Next thing is not necessarily a tool, but it is a form of clamp. At least that's what I'm using it for. It's a ratchet strap. Probably everyone has one of these laying in the back of their truck. You can use this for many different things. So if you're doing roll cages, say you get your main hoop a little tweaked one way or the other, you can ratchet strap. I mean, metal will bend, especially when it's an 11-foot piece of tube bending in shape of a U. It will flex a little unless you just completely got it out of plane. You can use it to hold things. If you're doing, strap to A pillars across to tighten them up against the tubes. I use it when I'm doing swing out bumpers. If I'm using a smaller, say a round tube for the main arm, trying to save weight. If you swing that in the open position and weld stuff, it's gonna wanna warp in the up direction. So I'll put it on a stand and almost preload it down so it can't go up and it stays level. And you may see some of that on some future videos. Probably everyone who's been around a welder, or they probably typed in welding tools, have seen these. They're pretty nice. They come in multiple depths, sizes, and there's quite a few different styles of these, but it's basically vice grips with a different oil head on it. You can adjust them pretty big. So I mean, you can go from nothing to, I can stick a piece of 2-inch tubing on here and clamp it to the table. This is just a style I like because they're fast. All you gotta do is, I'll keep hitting that. Just adjust the size you want, clamp it on off. It's really fast. That's why I like them. And I have a million of these, at least 2, but really 4 is ideal if you're buying some. These are Capri tools, and they did come from Amazon. 90% of the ones I have are Vice Grip brand, and they're good too, but I've used some other cheaper brands or knockoff brands, and they suck. But the Capri ones have held up good. They're actually the ones I use 90% of the time. C-clamps, everybody knows what a C-clamp is. I have more than one size of these. They come in all from small, tiny to 8-10 inches, and I have most sizes. The 3 to 6 range is the most common ones you'll use or need. So again, you can clamp stuff to the table. A lot of times I find myself using them on a vehicle itself. So if you're putting sliders on, sometimes I'll clamp the plates to the frame to hold it there. Or you've got something just a little tweak, you need to kind of pull it together, you can use this. Next is a clamp I actually don't see a lot of people using, and I don't know why. So this is, if you're bending tube, get you at least 4 of these. They're super cheap. You can get them at Hard Freight, Amazon, Lowe's, wherever. This is a spring clamp. This is a 2-inch spring clamp, so its max opening is 2 inches. It works out perfect for 1 3/4 tubing, which is what this is. I'll go ahead and show you a few examples of this, kind of why you would use, or where you would use it, and how you would use it. But I love these. I use them daily. So just a few examples of when you would use this clamp or how you would use this clamp. It's just for, I use it for clamping tubes. It's not really strong enough to clamp anything substantial like to a table. It will, but I mean, it's gonna move. If you're really trying to lock it down, it's not gonna do anything. So let's just say, and these little pieces here, I'm actually gonna probably make another video of. So I'm not gonna explain what that is right now, but let's just say you have a tube running this way, and you're mated up like this. It's gonna be hard for me to do, hold all this, but you can stick it over there like that, and it will clamp it. Now I'm trying to hold all this with one hand, but clamp it that way. You can also, if you've got it, say you're doing a set of sliders, you've got them standing straight up like this. You're using angled supports in the center. They're gonna want, you set them in there, they're gonna want to fall down. So you can clamp that just right there, and it will keep it from falling down. Another thing I do, say you're building a front bumper, every tube front bumper is gonna have a winch. the main bar, and the two little outrigger type supports going up to connect to the main bar. So let's just say you make the first piece on this side, you got it perfect, and you're trying to mirror that an easy way. So you're gonna pull off, measure where that one stops so you can get it exactly the same on this side. So you just make your mark, and you can clamp this, and it's just an easier visual when you're trying to set that tube up there. You can just butt it up to it every time instead of trying to stand up and look and see if you got that mark or got this on the mark. Another good thing, therefore, now you need either cut the grips off or get one without the little rubber grips. So let's say I'm doing a set of sliders. Once they're painted, I usually paint the whole set of sliders minus what gets welded to the frame and just a little bit in. So you can't really clamp it to anything else. You can clamp this. It's a 2-inch leg, which is what would be on a slider. You can clamp that to it, and then clamp your ground clamp to this clamp, and that works really nice. This is another clamp that I don't see used very often, and probably because no one knows what it is. Maybe not. I didn't know for a long time. I actually had these, and I think they even come in a kit that I bought, but I didn't know what they did. So, and this honestly may not even be what they're supposed to be for, but it does work really good for them. So I'll go ahead and show you that. Okay, so for these clamps, if you've seen me or seen my sliders that have these plates on top, this is an example of when I would use this clamp. So I don't know, like I said, I don't know that this is the actual purpose of this clamp. I honestly don't think it is, but it works really well for it. So you can basically clamp in sheet metal to tube. So we got our tube here, we want to clamp it there. Okay, there we go. So works pretty good for that. So you're trying to tack the bottom sides of these. You know, you could just lay, if you're welding the outsides, you could just lay it and tack it. I always like to weld from the bottom so it's a nice clean look and you don't see all those welds. So I would clamp it, flip the slider over, and weld it from this side. So these are really handy for that. There's other, you know, not just sliders that you would use. Anytime you want to clamp a plate to a tube like this, these work really well. So I just realized I missed this magnet when we were talking about magnets. This is just, everyone's seen these, little magnet for if you drop something, you can, you know, extend it out, pick it up inside an engine bay or whatever. But these are actually a really nice little tool to have. So if you got a little small piece of metal you're trying to, say like a little gusset, it's like kind of in a weird spot, and you know, when you have really thick welding gloves on, you can't hold anything. So these are nice. Another big thing I use them for is tubing caps. So I don't make my tubing caps. You can. Honestly, it's worth buying, in my opinion, just buying them. They're perfect size, they're cheap, they're like 50 cents a piece, and it saves you a lot of time. So you got a welding glove on, you're trying to hold it and weld it. For one thing, you may burn your fingers, but also with a welding glove on, you're holding it, you can't really tell where you're holding it. It's also hard to hold, so you can take this and kind of just hold it up there and then tack it on, and it makes it a lot easier to hold that than trying to do it with your hands. You could do all this stuff without a level. You don't need it, but I definitely recommend it. I'm bad about eyeballing everything. I'll just stand back, look at it, and sometimes that's the best way to do it if you got good eyes. You know, sometimes a vehicle may not be level, so you lay a level across it and then level everything. It's just not gonna work. I still would get a level. I use it a lot. It's just a simple little torpedo level. There's a million different brands of them out there. I don't even know where this one came from. It's kind of self-explanatory. Everybody knows what a level is. You know, you're leveling something horizontal, plumbing it. There's that one. This level is actually conduit level, but I do not use it for conduit. So, and this level has one purpose, and if you're never building a swing out bumper, you probably don't need it. but that is the sole purpose of this level for me, is leveling a spindle on a swing out bumper. There'll be videos in the future of me building swing outs, and we'll obviously walk through all that, so I'm not going to touch on it a whole lot. But obviously you want your spindle level in every direction. They're only about 3 and 4 inches tall, so you can't fit a standard torpedo or any other level on it. So this thing fits on the spindle itself, and it works really good for leveling it. So next thing is a protractor, angle finder, whatever you want to call it. And I just have 2 different ones here. These are 2 that I like. Both of them came from Amazon. And this is, out of the 2, if you're only gonna buy one, this is my favorite. The only issue, as I've dropped it a million times, if you kind of have it leaning in this direction, the needle wants to fall against the glass and stick. So that can get you in trouble. But like I said, I've dropped it off the top of roofs of cars, and it's been abused. This is another good one. I like it. It feels a little like cheesier, but it has a magnet here. I never used that one, but on the bottom side as well. And it's got this little adjustable red dial. I don't really know. I never used that either. Both these are good. I would recommend both of them, and I'll link them in the Amazon description. I'm sorry, I'll link them in the description. Next, this is also one of my favorite tools. I've had this thing for like 8 years. You see I didn't drop something on it, I guess. But this thing has held up like a champ. I don't even know if I ever changed a battery in it. If I have, it like once. And there'll be more videos you'll see me using this, but it's a digital angle cube. So you turn it on, whatever you want to set it on, you zero it out, and that's zeroed. So then from that point on, it will read the angle. So you'll see me using this, and this is how I keep my tubes in plane when I'm bending tube. So I'll zero them out on the die and set them on, and we'll do another video of that. But definitely need this if you're getting into tube bending. Roll cages, that type of stuff. Honestly, having 2 of these is a good idea. Next thing is a laser. You don't necessarily need this. I had not used a laser for a really long time. I've probably had it for a year or so now, but I do really like it, and I wish I'd bought it sooner, so that's why it's here. It has a lot of purposes, and doesn't necessarily need to be used as a level. So it projects a laser line, and when it's blinking, it's not level. You know, people think because of my Instagram reels, they see it blinking and think I don't know what I'm doing. Well, I had done that on purpose. Let's just say you're chopping the back half of your truck bed and you want to do a high clearance. If there's a body line there, you may want to follow that body line rather than just cutting it level. And I do that all the time. I think it looks way better to follow a body line than just cut everything level. Most companies cut everything level, and I think it looks like it does shoot a crosshair. So you're level here and level here. It's really nice for, let's say you're building a front bumper or a rear bumper, you know, finding the center of the vehicle with that center crosshair. You know, I do a lot of Toyotas. You just line that cross right in the center, the little T on the emblem, and there's your center point for everything, and that's where you're measuring all your tube from the center point of that. So super handy to have. I recommend it. I should have bought it sooner. Next thing, you don't need this. It's definitely, well, it is a beginner tool, I would say. I thought that it was gonna be the greatest thing in the world because I sucked it in tube notching, and I thought this was gonna be my answer to everything, and it's not. It does, you know, it could be definitely handy. I never use it. But I've been doing it long enough now that I just don't need it. It may help you if you're just getting started out, understand kind of. So let me just show you how it works. So here's your tube. Let's just, for the video, we're just gonna do a 90 degree. Now, you don't need this to know how to notch for a 90 degree. Well, you might, but let's just say, so you take this, you push it up against it. Now I'm doing it with one hand. You kind of need to feather the little fins out with your fingers as you're doing it. See, with one hand it's not really doing that well, but basically I'll just do it with my hand so you can see. You know, it will form to the shape of your notch. So if you got this crazy notch you're trying to do like this, you can see it will form to it, and then you just slide it over the tube and mark it out. These come from Amazon. It's called Pipe Master, and they make them for every size pipe and tube. Those are not the same thing. This is for 1 3/4 tubing, and I also have one for 1.5 tubing. Like I said, I never use them a lot. I don't know that most guys that have been doing it for a long time do use them. But if you're just getting started out, it's a good, it's a good tool. It'll help you understand, like, push it up into a joint and you can see how it's forming. The more you do it, the more you'll understand, oh, that's how I need to do it next time. And before you know it, you'll just be holding up there and eyeballing it without any kind of tool. Scissors. Obviously you're not gonna cut any metal with these, but a good pair of scissors goes a long ways. So if you're like me, I don't have a plasma table. Now, I do have 2 good friends who do have plasma tables, and that's why I don't have one. Let's just say you're making a bracket to go on a bumper. You're gonna make it out of cardboard first. Well, I do, and most people would. So this will cut cardboard really nice. I do not use corrugated cardboard. I use the single ply type. So what you get your beer or like cereal boxes, that type of stuff. It's thin, it cuts good, and it's way more accurate when you're trying to cut a little small piece and shape with stuff. So a good pair of scissors. Squares. So this is just a 90-degree block. It does the same job as this. It's just an extra one. So basically, well, no, I'm sorry, it does not do the same as this, but if you were using it as a straight edge, it would be the same thing. So you can just, if you've tacked a 90-degree, you can hold this in there and it's solid. It just doesn't move. So you'll know if you've got a perfect 90-degree angle. I don't use these a whole lot. I can't remember why I bought them. Just some form of right angle square. Now, speed square, you need one of these for sure. I definitely recommend it. This is a Milwaukee. The Swanson is like the one that's made this speed square, I think. I don't know. That's one you'll see in an old man's tool belt. I like the Milwaukee for, if you watch my last video, I come from a construction background. I actually hate this square using it for construction. I hate the lip. Now, not everyone might. It has a lot wider backing than some of the other speed squares. But I do like this for metal. So a lot of metal, say square tubing, the joints are not perfectly square. They're a little rounded. It just makes for a better, working with metal, I've just found it to be better. So I'll show you a few things you can do with this. And there's a million things you can do with this. But not all of it you'll do working with metal. I mainly do just a few things with it. It's a nice marking tool. So a couple ways I use the speed square. So you'll find, obviously, marking, just laying up there, mark it. You got a perfectly straight line. If you have a longer piece of material, you have 7 inches to make that straight line. I'm not gonna go into crazy detail. You can just Google a speed square video, everything they do. Big things, so straight line, the other side is a 45. So lay it up there, that's a 45-degree line. So if you're doing 2 pieces of square on a 45, that's a super easy way to do it. I use this as a tape measure a lot. So if I'm marking out anything less than 7 inches, so if I'm laying out a little, especially like some bolt holes or something in a small pattern, I'll never pull a tape. I'll just lay this here, say I'm at 1 inch, 4 inches, whatever, 6 1/4. All those marks are on the edge of the square, and it makes it really fast. So if you're doing a plate, you can hit 4, you can hold the marker on there, drag it down. There's a line at 4 inches. The other thing is angles. So for instance, On my sliders at the edges of the square tip, I do a 35 degree. So if you want to mark that 35 degrees, and again, Google this or look up another video on speed squares, will show you this. But basically, this side is all degrees. And what you want to do is whatever degree you're looking for, you want to pivot it to that is on the edge of this, the edge of your material on this side. So we're doing 35, it's here. I'm going to pivot it. 35 is on the edge, you mark that line, and that's the 35 degree angle. A welding brush, these are cheap. And as you get better at welding, you'll find yourself not really ever using this once you get your welder dialed in. Every once in a while, if you get in a weird spot, you just can't quite get the torch in there, it's gonna blow that black or that brown residue all over everything. So sometimes I'll use this to brush it off. Usually I just leave it, and when I go to paint, I'll just wipe everything off with paint thinner. But it is worth having for sure. You definitely need one. The same one will last you a really long time. So a punch. This is a spring-loaded style center punch. You can use the kind you hit with a hammer. That's loud and a little bit less accurate in my opinion, stuff bouncing everywhere. This thing has been great. I think it comes from Harbor Freight, maybe, I don't even know. But so say you're drilling some holes, you know, I hate drilling holes and I try to avoid it if I can, but sometimes you just got to. So you got your mark, you basically just set it on there and push it, and it makes a little dimple in the metal, and that your drill bit will set in so that it doesn't walk around the hole. And this thing's great. It's way better than trying to hit stuff with a hammer. They're pretty cheap to have, and so far this thing's lasted a really long time. Straight edge, this thing is about ready to go in the trash. Working with plate, it's really good to have straight, and I have multiple of these, longer, shorter. The 24-inch one is a good size. If you're doing like a plate bumper, you may find yourself needing a longer one. Occasionally, I'll find myself needing a longer one. I have a 48-inch one. So you can use it just for marking, or the reason this one looks the way it does is I use it for a plasma cutter. So if I'm cutting something by hand, I'll run the edge of the plasma cutter down it so it's a perfectly straight line. So these are definitely worth having. Big pliers. If you've never been around a welder, been around welding in general, or even tools, you may not have seen these, and you don't have to have these. Plenty of people do not have these, but I think they're worth having. I like them. They have several different purposes. So they're a needle nose style tip. You can use for whatever. They have this little circle here is meant to clamp around the actual tip of the welder or the gun and you can tighten it up in there. You got a cutter to cut your wire, and this bigger circle here clamps around the nozzle of the gun, and that's what lets you, if you have a thread-on nozzle, you can unscrew it. You don't want to tighten any of that stuff down. Honestly, I usually just tighten them by hands, but sometimes they may get stuck on a little bit, and you can break. And then it's kind of tapered, and this is the main cutting wire, and this purpose is the main thing I use them for. So you can take your nozzle off and stick it down in the nozzle, kind of twist it around and get all that slag build up inside your nozzle. It'll break it right off and clean it out good. A couple more cutting tools that are not going to cut metal. A razor blade and some good tin snips. You see this one took a nice hit with some 1/4-inch tubing, but it's still going strong. So if you're building bumpers, you're working on cars, a lot of times you'll find yourself cutting out fender liners because you're doing a more high clearance. I use, depending on what the inner fender liner is made out of, I use this, or if it's a little thicker, I use tin snips. These will cut metal, but it's gonna be really, really thin metal that you're probably not even gonna find on a car. These are good to have. I use them a good bit. There's lots of plastic, you know, on the insides of the fenders that I'll trim with these. They're good to have. I have more than one, so I have the red, the green, the yellow, for left, right cuts, center cuts, that type of stuff. So you'll find yourself with one. If you have a straight one, maybe it's not cutting right. you need to use the other one. But that's something you can look up on your own of the 10 snips and what they're for. These are a long nose center cut. You'll notice most of the time the entire handle, but Milwaukee can't get away from putting everything red. So they just put little tips of yellow on there. But most of the time, any other brand, you're gonna see a red handle, a yellow handle, and a green handle. And that's for left cuts, center cuts, right cuts. And that sounds funny, but if you're actually cutting something, you're trying to go left with a right cut snip, you'll realize it's just not working. So they do have their purpose. I have multiple of every color. If you're just gonna buy one, I'll just shoot for the straight ones. You know, they're probably the most universal stack. Marking tools. The most used tool marker for me is just a regular old like Sharpie style permanent marker. Sometimes I'll use a paint pen. I recommend any color but black, because usually I'm marking on like a frame or just something that's, you know, not new metal. It's just like an existing like piece on a car. It's already been painted black. Blue's not that great either, but like yellow, orange, white, it really stands out. And so if you're like, say you're marking out where you're gonna grind a part of the paint off, this works nice. I don't use this a whole lot. I think it may be more of like an old school thing. I'm not really sure, but it is nice. So it's soapstone. You can grind it down to a point if you want. It marks out white. If you can see that on the video. And if you can sharpen it so it's really fine. So if you take a pencil and try to write on metal, it's not really gonna do that good. Say you're laying out a plate where you're gonna drill 4 equal spaced holes in it, and you're trying to use a Sharpie's gonna have a little bit thicker mark. So it may, I mean, that's a 1/16 of an inch you can be off. And when you're talking 4 different directions, that could basically throw all your holes off. So this may be a little bit more accurate thing. I don't find myself doing that type of work, so I don't use this a lot. And permanent markers, they are not all created equally. I wish I had a Milwaukee here for the Milwaukee fanboys, but I do not, because they're garbage. I tried them. Sharpies suck too. They're just as bad. Well, they're a little better than a Sharpie. If you're only ever writing, if you take your metal and you clean it as soon as you get it, and there's no oil on it, no dirt on it, no rust on it, the Milwaukee and the Sharpie will do fine and it'll last forever. But the moment you ride across a old tube that just came out of the factory or wherever, they oiled it before you got it, it pretty much ruins them. So I quit using these. And I found these, and everybody hates on Ryobi, make fun of the guys that use Ryobi tools or whatever, but they make some really good markers. Now I don't know if it's like a space pen and the inside is charged because it's in a metal housing, but this thing will write anywhere you put it, upside down, over the top of just motor oil, like it doesn't matter, and it just keeps on writing. The only downfall is the metal housing. This one's fairly new and you can see all the little dents in it. I've used them, look like they've been ran over by a car and they still write, so I don't think it's necessarily a big deal breaker, but they do end up looking like crap after a little while, but they just keep writing. This is 100% the marker I would recommend. They're fairly cheap. I've tried a lot of them and this thing is absolutely killer. So while we're talking about markers, this is a tube marking tool that one of my friends designed and 3D printed for me. So I'll just put a piece of tube here so you can see what it's for. So this one's made for 1 3/4 tubing. So it'll straddle the tube like this, and it actually will fit all the markers. So you just stick it down in there, and you may want to clamp your tube on the ends, but do that. See, I wasn't holding it, but it marks a nice straight line across the tube. So for some reason, and these are equally spaced, 90 degrees, and the center one here is 45 degrees in a half circle. So it's a neat little tool. It may be a little more of an advanced tool. So if you're getting into like rotating planes, being able to mark different parts of the tube, it may help you. You can mark before you bend the tube at all. You can mark a center line straight down it, and then mark a spot on your die. And then every time you load that tube in, line that center mark with the mark on your die to try to keep it in plane. I do have these on my website. So if you want to purchase one, you can check them out there. So the next is tape measures. Now, again, this is one of those tools that not all tape measures are created equally, and everyone's gonna have their own opinion on this. I found that I prefer this style. So it's got the like auto lock. You don't have to lock it to hold it out. It stays locked out. You press the button to put it back in. Coming from a construction background, I was, Fat Max, most amount of standout you could get, that type thing. But I found that doesn't really have its place working with metal, at least in the way that I do. I do have this one that I keep and I use for measuring out length of sliders, and that's basically all I get used for, because the standout is nice. But this tape measure here is my main go-to. It comes from Lowe's, sells them, Amazon sells them, Chameleon, I guess is what you say that. This is my second one. You can tell it's kind of been through the ringer. The first one, it finally broke the blade. Now these look like cheesy little tape measures, and they kind of are, but I really like it. So the auto lock is really nice because you can say you're measuring out something small, you can just pull it out like that. It doesn't matter if it falls over. The blade is super flexible. Again, a lot of people might see that as a downfall, but it's super nice because you can just use it around almost like a paper or one of those soft tape measures. You can bend it around stuff. So when I measure for any kind of tubing, I'm gonna do a front bumper. There's calculations out there, Intech and all these things where you can have no waste. You can take this tape measure and hold it the shape you're gonna bend it. Say you're gonna do a front bumper, you can bend it here, and just pull that out to where your tube would be. And that's gonna be almost the exact length of tube you need. You can add an inch or two to it if you're scared about cutting it too short. So just the fact that these things can move so good, I really like that for working with metal. They're cheap, they're really cheap. So, I mean, the fact that they're made a little cheaper and don't last as long, they're a quarter of the price of like what this is. The last thing we're gonna talk about is protractors. So I have more than just these. These are two of my favorites. So that's what we're gonna talk about. Both came from Amazon, and I use both a good bit. This one right here is a digital. So you turn it on. I don't even know if the battery, yep. So turn it on and you can zero it in this position, or zero in the 180 position. If you're working with tube and you're referencing the bend marks on your tube bender, you're gonna want to zero it at 180. And from that point on, that's gonna be your mark. When you're taught in school, you're not taught that this is a 120 degree angle. You're taught that that's like 70 or something. So that's just how the tube bender marker is. So you're bending from a straight piece of tube, you bend at 10 degrees, you bend at 20 degrees, you bend at 30, 40, whatever, up to 90 degrees. And past 90, you're bending in hundreds and so on. So that might be a little confusing for some people in the beginning, but this is really nice. So you're laying out like a piece of tube for your front bumper. You want to follow the front end where it starts to turn or whatever. You bend it to how you want it, 22.5 degrees. You bend your tube 22.5. Next one, same thing. It's just an old school. There's no digital readout. It's got a little arrow that points to the number of degrees that you are. And one side's longer than the other. I found that to be nice. So say already got this half of the tube bent already, and it'll bend both ways. You know, you have to fiddle with it, but it'll bend this way and give you the accurate reading. But the one long side is nice. If I can get it unstuck here.
5 minutes later.
Okay. So let's just say for instance, we're doing a winch bumper. You got your winch tray and all that already built, and you want to build your front tube or main tube for that. So it's going to be straight at the winch, obviously. And that tube's already there, and we know that. So we're going to use a short side, and this long side is nice because it's going to go almost all the way to that corner of the fender, and you can more accurately tell, you know, exactly where that tube's going to land. Whereas if you're using the short one, you're kind of eyeballing that distance away, and you may be off a few degrees just because you couldn't tell exactly where it's going to go. It is a little thinner, so this one's really close. It's like 1.5 inches. It's really close to the diameter of the tubing. With this one, you're going to need to remember that the tubing itself is going to be thicker, and you're referencing the center mark of this. You can scoot this to the outside edge of the tube or the inside edge of the tube. You just need, whatever you do on this side, you need to remember that's what you need to do on this side. All right, so that's it for today's video. Hopefully for you guys just getting started out, you found this helpful. If you did, hit the like and the subscribe button. If you already knew all this stuff and you just want to support me, hit the like and the subscribe button. I'm gonna do more videos like this. I'm gonna do welders, my tube bender, my tube roller, power tools, all that type stuff. Now, if you're following this channel, hoping to see builds and me building cool stuff and show you how to build cool stuff, that's definitely coming. I'm just trying to figure out how to use YouTube and edit videos right now. I'm doing it all on an iPhone, so it's kind of difficult for me, and I'm learning. And I really wanted to know all that down before I try to film a week-long build and put it in a YouTube video. So hang in there. They are going to be on this channel, I promise. Just right now I'm kind of starting off slow with these easier videos. So again, if you like the video, you want to support me anyway, hit the like and the subscribe button. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next week for the next video.